floors. We should be polite and say people. People are the most important ingredient in shop floors.
Welcome to the Connected Shop Floor podcast, where we explore real stories and big ideas that keep the factory floor buzzing.
In today's episode, we have Francisco Duarte. He is currently a professor at Minho University. Previously to that, he worked almost for 30 years at the manufacturing world at Bosch. He also worked as a consultant and has many stories of how the industry is evolving, how we'll have factories with no lights, and how students will have to evolve on this changing world with vibe coding becoming the norm. Hope you love this episode. I'm Marco Chan, and this is the Connected Shop Floor. You have a very diverse background. I see that you have experience in industrial settings like Bosch, and then you work in consulting at Capgemini, and while always staying very connected to research and academia. Now, these are three areas that I think they are not seen as fully aligned, right? There is that saying, oh, that only works, but in theory. Do you think that we are bridging that gap?
Good questions. Of course, even though we may not reach yet a perfect status, we need to have somehow a path towards it. Every company needs to innovate. So if we stick only to current operations, in some years we will be not at the cutting edge of technologies, of our products will not incorporate the latest technologies that at the end can bring some benefit to the company. So we need to innovate on the company side. On the consulting side, we have the responsibility to bring our customers into this desirable state. And on the academia side, it's my most loved area, my passion, where indeed we have time to think about the future, not only about the present. And this is very important because on companies, sometimes you don't have time to think about the future. And sometimes you are even getting so good results that you think you don't need to think about the futures. You get stuck on the present, and we have lots of companies that made terrible mistakes thinking that their market, their industry will be existing forever and they will dominate their industries, and then they have, let's say, nasty surprises. So let's say they are three legs of the same table, despite tables need four, but at least they don't fall.
Some of them you can do with three. Three is the equilibrium,
It's
right?
the minimum.
It's a minimum you need. When we look into research projects, and you talked about big corporations and small ones, I know that you were also involved with startups.
Yes.
There is a big difference of rhythm and innovation. Is that true? Can a startup bring more innovation than a big corporation, or in the end, resources and money also play a big role, and big corporations do have that?
So big corporations, you have the resources, you have the technologies already on the companies, you have resources on central departments that you can use on your behalf, and you have all this stuff already defined, human resources, whatever. How to buy a PC that you need,
Yes.
it's sorted.
Small little things that we don't remember, right? It's like
Yes.
small things
All
of buying a
these
PC.
grains of sand that may endanger your throughput. But for one side, this is very beneficial. On the other side, this can be very restrictive. For instance, in large companies, you cannot buy what you want. If we want to buy a Raspberry Pi and go to a shop, if you do this, you will be accused of being a maverick buyer. You need to have three proposals officially before. So instead of taking 1 hour to go to the shop and pick a Raspberry Pi, you will get 1 month. But at the end, you are constrained by all the setup of the organization. On the small company side, you are much faster and you are crazier than in big companies. So this could be an advantage. So it's fast to get to the first results, but then it's very hard to sustain results. And even in Portugal or Europe, the ecosystem of venture capital is not really making big risks. So they want to have small companies with a tremendous portfolio of clients, with a huge turnover, and at the end to have zero risk almost. So this valley of death of the startups is mainly because after you express yourself with your first idea, the first viable product, then you have a big gap to scale up. But on both sides, it's possible to do innovation. And one thing that sometimes bothers me is that the society somehow puts on the students that come out of the university with 21 or 23 years, and they are responsible to innovate. And all of the rest of the society, we have a passive role. And this should not be true. So you should have innovation with 20 years, 30, 40, 80 years. And where you have most resources and most experience with 40 years, 50, you should also be promoted to do innovation and somehow to bring to the market new products and services. This is somehow at the end how economy evolves.
Is it about a mindset? Because you said something that makes complete sense. I never thought about it before. Is like we tend to think about innovation coming from academia, from young people, from young companies, and we forget that all of us should be working on it. But don't you think, is it a mindset or is it incentives? Are people being incentivized the right way to innovate, to bring innovation on their workplace?
It's a good point. For instance, I was aware that in Brazil, the big companies have to invest a percentage, I think 10% of their turnover, not profits, turnover, on innovation by buying innovation to credited innovation centers. So this brings innovation to the right place. Big companies with big money investing seriously on new products and services with the innovation ecosystems that can be these institutes or can be also together working in partnerships, smaller companies. Okay, I think this is the way to go. So companies that are already established, they foster innovation, they promote all these, for instance, open innovation approaches in order to bring into their business new ideas, new companies, small companies, innovation institutes, and so forth.
I know that you worked a lot on both sides, right? From the company perspective and also from the university perspective. Uh, what is missing from some of these projects to not be just forgotten? And what is missing for more of it so that we can have more and more of this type of project?
Why so many projects fail? It's because they don't have proper innovation. So they have innovation to apply to funding, and at the end, the failure rate is so high because it's not really innovation. I will stay on the same market with the same products. I will not put nothing new on the products or services or even internally on my processes. So this, I think, it's a big differentiator. We need, in Portugal at least, we need companies that are, let's say, driven by innovation and not focusing on funding their innovation. So this should be the second step. It's a good thing, but not the first priority.
I know. I love that point because I discussed that a lot also here internally. That I think when you have these grants available, it looks almost as if you don't apply to them that you're losing money because the money is available. And I think it's very hard to, from the people that are giving the grants out, to have a system that you can roll out on many different companies, have a system that's not being used in a wrong way, but also promoting innovation. Every time I challenge it, I cannot come with a better way of doing it. Do you see a way that we can guarantee that the funding is there, it's not being misused, but it's still promoting the proper innovation that's coming naturally, not inflated?
Okay, I will try to answer thinking that I should avoid to be chased by CEOs and so on in the street. But
That's what we want.
at the end, we can reorder instead of applying for funding and losing days and days of work of many meetings just to prepare an application, and then at the end you get a no as a result. For instance, in European funding, you have 7% of approvals. So imagine how many companies, how many people are losing their time instead of creating value, just creating paper that at the end goes to the recycle bin. Okay, so
Yes.
this is the
And
point.
it's time and focus also,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because you're
yeah,
focusing on these projects,
sure,
you're not
for
focusing
sure.
on other things, right?
We lose productivity and money. So
Exactly.
we could reorder the phases. So you do things and then you apply for funding. And if you did really innovation, you should be allowed with a almost for sure you get the funding. So you can express these results in terms of turnover, of new products launched, whatever. We can create a lot of indicators just to show that you did something useful. So you start with your money. You could ask for some credit, and it should be very easy to get credit from these funding programs. And at the end, you consolidate the result. You add a credit, you invest your money, you reach these results. At the end, I will pay your effort. We could have a very good idea right now. And if you want to put it in practice, if we apply first to an European fund, we will lose years or months and efforts. And at the end, when we start to do the project, maybe we could talk and say, hey, Marco, I think that use of the technology is not anymore relevant. But since we have the funding, we have to do it. Otherwise, we should ask for deviations and approvals and so forth. So it's even worse. Sometimes we get the money, but we are, let's say, constrained to do things in a certain way that are not already the best way to do it. So we have always the chance to change a bit, but we cannot change everything. So
Yeah, exactly, because the project was approved for a certain scope. It took maybe 1 or 2 years to be approved. In the meanwhile, technologies changes. The company focus is also a little bit different, but then you have to do a 2-year-old project
yeah,
now because the grant is available. And sometimes you even get penalties if you don't execute it right.
I read a bit of the Draghi report. Mario Draghi
Mhm.
created a report based on many inputs about the competitiveness in these areas of the European economy. And we can all notice that Europe is losing their leading role on innovation because we were somehow focused on innovation areas that are not innovative. So somehow European Union said focus on gasoline systems and diesel systems, and they are not anymore relevant in some years ago, and recently the same thing. So in Europe we all say that we are very good at making regulations and we have fantastic regulations, AI acts and so forth, but all the AIs, artificial intelligence, the big ones are not in Europe. So we have a fantastic regulation and no AI relevant, and the others have the AIs relevant, and I don't know about regulation. So we should always balance. Regulation is helpful, is beneficial, but cannot be a constraint. Regulations can come from European level, nation level, but also inside your organization. I face it sometimes. For instance, if you have an innovation department that is forced on big companies to work exactly with the same rules as the, let's say, the purchasing department or manufacturing department, at the end you are not innovative at all. So the regulation, let's call people from the finance and accounting, if they use the same approach with innovation, they will kill innovation immediately because they force all these three proposals for each buying. They force you to have financial reports, whatever reports. I'm sure that they are relevant, but if you force the innovation people to do that, they will not make innovation, and at the end, the turnover, they will leave the company because they will be fed up with this excess of regulation.
Yes, and I think you as when you're describing the solution, it's a little bit how startups are also how they are built. We have to create an MVP, a viable product, then we present it to the market, to the VC market. They fund initial phase, so that's a pre-seed or seed phase. Then you need to get to some other assumptions that you will validate on your vision. You can also adapt, pivot, because in the meanwhile, time has passed, and then you get to the next funding stage. So it's a little bit about stages than rather having the whole funding available and a massive project to get it available. And maybe that might be also a little bit the solution, right? Make it more incremental.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. You can use these approaches, MVPs and version 1, 2, 3, and 4, but also you could have a budget, for instance, let's say $10,000. You can use it, whatever you want, you can buy with it. It's your problem. So it's controlled. It's $10,000 in a big company. This is nothing. But to solve these Raspberry Pis, I want to go to a conference in the nearby city. You need to order a car. You need to get the approval of I don't know how many people. At the end of the conference, it's gone, and you still don't have the approval to travel. So you need pocket money to do innovation, and you need this incremental approach that you just mentioned. So we do one thing, we prove that we have value on that thing, then we move on, and some of them, we have to assume that many of them will fail. And this is really the point. In innovation, we cannot guarantee that it will work. This is not I'm teasing you, mechanical engineering,
Oh.
where everything is calculated, the effort, the coefficient of whatever, the material. No, we have some degree of incertitude, but we need to cope with that. So if we have 10 projects, one is good, this one should pay for the 10 and for many more.
Exactly, which again is a little bit the startup world, maybe not in Portugal, as you said, because we're here more conservative. We invest in 10 companies and we don't want any of them to fail. But more the US approach is I invest in 10 and one or two will pay the whole fund and will pay the whole innovation and have less restrictions on how each company goes along, because then you're killing innovation if you put that 10K, as you said, full of restrictions. Then whoever is trying to innovate, sometimes you actually don't know what you're doing, right? You have a feeling I should go this way, but I have to learn, adapt. So if I have to do a whole business case plan for those 10K, I will spend more time doing the business case than actually implementing the innovation I would like to validate.
We have two big approaches. One is that you separate the innovation team. They are not doing anything for the, let's say, the current turnover of the company. So let's call it a skunk work approach that was used in the United States some years ago. So the idea is that you have people that are absolutely out of the normal business of the company. They are thinking about the future. This has big advantage. For instance, when you are working on secret projects that non-disclosure is a topic, so we need to have these guys absolutely out of the daily business. But the trade-off is that the remaining of the company start to think that they are the doers, the other are the thinkers. I don't have to think because they will treat about everything. They are somehow viewed as above their level. So I'm working for hours wages today. They are lunatic closed on that department. So despite the advantage of secret projects, it's not a desirable solution, but we can still see this kind of approach. The other way around, it's also worse. I think it's even worse. You have these guys assigned to innovation and to operations, human resources, logistics, and so on. So they do innovation on the free time, which is zero.
That's a little bit like continuous improvement, right? When you say Toyota said they don't have any people dedicated to continuous improvement because everyone is doing
Yes,
continuous
yes, yes, yes,
improvement. Quality is the same thing. Do you think that's the answer? So everyone should be working
yes.
on innovation. We should not have an innovation department, an innovation team. Everyone should be working on innovation as a culture. Is that possible?
I will not go so far because I think there should be an innovation department, but not completely separated from operations. You could put people of the innovation department moving around the company. For instance, 1 month you should go to operations, and the same. So you should bring some guys from the normal business. For instance, you put a financial guy in the innovation department for 1 month or 2 months. So we should promote that they step out and someone step into the department. I read a book some years ago from Eric Schmidt, that was a CEO from Google, and he says that the time of the employees should be divided into 75, or let's say, work focused on the current wages. They should be productive today. 20% on innovation projects. So they all should be involved. It's more like what you were asking, and 5% on crazy ideas. You should do whatever you want. If you want to plant corn, you should plant corn. It's nothing to do with the projects of the company, whatever you want. But at the end, if you let your employees to do crazy things, somehow in the future you get. He gives many examples of products that were created in Google with this approach. So you let your employees express themselves, and then you collect, because the company is aware that what they are doing and can incorporate new ideas, new products, new markets, whatever. So this is the perfect world. For me, I'm not so a believer that this is feasible for all people in the company, because to be honest, innovation, you need to have somehow let's call it a mindset, or something in your head that believes you should be optimistic. You should believe that new technologies will bring new advantage for you.
It's really funny that you bring Google up, because I just heard today that they are going to invest 90 billion in this AI race. So if you would think about those 5% that you were talking about is 4.5 billion, they will be just burning. But then you get things like the Transformer, right? The paper about Transformers that led to this whole AI boost. But funny enough, the whole thing is that they were the ones coming with the paper, but then ChatGPT was the one coming up with a product. So it is like, even with that mentality, such huge innovations were not used at the right time, because maybe there was not the business sense there. Maybe it was too costly, which I think it was the case, right? They did not see a path for it to become a product.
You were speaking, and I was remembering of the Kodak example. So Kodak invented the digital photography, and they were the ones that say, "Calm down, because we sell a lot of films, and our money is coming from film." So probably Google was receiving so much turnover based on the search engine and all this monetization of the search engine, that moving immediately to AI will cause a problem. So, but I think they amended the way. So they were not the first adopters, but then they came back in full power.
I agree with you. I think Google will win this race, and they almost dropped the ball, but it was unbelievable the way how they got it. And yeah, but okay, let's going back to Shopfloor, or else we would deviate on Google's innovation. Now, thinking back on the Shopfloor, which you have amazing, I think 30 years or more experience working in industrial
Only
environment.
27.
Oh, sorry, 27 exactly. So which is incredible, and you have seen so many projects. What is when you think about the shop floor itself, where the action is happening, what do you think are the key ingredients to bring any research on innovation there? What do you think works?
Of course, this is, we should be polite and say people. People are the most important ingredient in shop floors when you have people, okay?
That's a political answer.
But on top of that, it's well-defined processes and the courage to follow the processes. Because sometimes you define fantastic process, let's call it, for instance, pull systems, whatever, and then on the first difficulty, you move out and you start to do exceptions. So in this case, I will not follow the standard process. And as we all know, diversity is a nightmare on a shop floor. So if you are a shop floor manager, you want that everything is exactly the same. Diversity, you should kill all diversity, because it forces you to have different approaches, different systems, everything. So processes and processes and processes. First approach. Then voiding the digitalization. So they say, I don't need a software because I can see everything here. I have a red flag, I move to the red flag. I have a bell, I have a red light, whatever. I move, I can control everything. I'm the boss of my shop floor because I am on the shop floor. I know everything. These are famous last words, I would say. Since 10, 15 years, digitalization is unavoidable, because no human can control what is going on real time, and it will react always based on past data and information. So you could have your shift report, or you could have your managers coming to you and tell you something, and the action you should do And even so, you are working on the past. So currently, you need to react before problems occur. So you need real time. So first, we need very good processes. Then you need digitalization in the sense of real time. And let's say currently many people call them digital twins. Let's call it, I like the word, I also teach on that area. So we should have a digital twin, full scope, meaning full scope means that you can receive data, you have intelligent services, but you also do things based on the decisions that some digital service made or yourself, a human made. They can produce without proper processes, of course. They can produce without digital tools, real time, whatever. Yes, of course, but they will lose money.
Eventually, they might actually lose the whole business because competition will be fierce. But when you look into you said how you started, you said, I cannot change anything in a factory because it will. It's not I cannot change. It's hard. The mindset is not prepared for changes. It's prepared to do the same thing over and over again. So you're really good at doing that. So you want to bring innovation. Then we talked previously about how we should start projects in innovations with MVPs and grow as we see that its return on investment is there and it's a good idea that we're doing. And now we're talking about the digital twin for your whole supply chain, which is tremendously complex. When we look at the future that we want to have the digital passport, that you know exactly what happened with that product, we will eventually have to get there. But how can one start? Don't you think that companies tend to get stuck in pilot mode and don't get to the next level? And what can be done there? Should we do less pilots? Should we do more pilots? How how do we kick this off?
Let's say it's also a very good point. I always said when I was working on that area, if we want to sabotage a project, we make a pilot. Okay.
uh, that's really bad news for me.
So with a pilot, you can always make fantastic conclusion. It's like in mathematics. If you prove that your theorem works in one case, you don't prove that the theorem works in all the cases. So you cannot make that assumption. But many companies do that. To be honest, I am not keen to have pilots. My approach was always in the sense that we should have a plan to do. Say, you read things, you talk with people, and you see the technology trends, and you say, this is my way. And if you have this mindset, you should have a plan to not completely, but to cover the most important parts of your area, your domain. Let's call it, for instance, supply chain. We should have a plan to deal with customers, to deal with our production, with our storage, and with our suppliers. So we should have how to digitalize this process and their sub process. Okay, and then we start to implement, not all at the same time, but framed with a plan, which is very different to make a trial and then say, oh, very good, let's escalate. No, you should have all these non-functional requirements. What is my desired throughput? What are my, for instance, the number of suppliers that I could have at the maximum. So if I do a trial with a supplier, then I have 1,000 suppliers, the system does not work. So we need to set up these non-functional requirements, to set up a global architecture, and to start to implement important things at the beginning. Sometimes you hear of low-hanging fruit. Low-hanging fruit, for me, it's going to the most important things that we can do right now. It's not going to the easy.
No quick wins.
Yeah,
Right.
quick wins sometimes drives the company. Oh, they are fantastic. Now it's easy. You did one and now it's easy. No, you should go for the real thing at the beginning, because it will give you experience if it is doable or not, and the lessons that you should learn to in order to implement the remaining of the project.
That's really interesting because that's a very different approach, and we will eventually have to get to the point that you don't like the agile word, or you see it a different way. So we will have to touch there. What I understand, if we get that approach, it makes us think about the whole architecture, right? It makes us think about the whole requirements we have. We need to sell that internally and make a business case. Don't we then get stuck in the paperwork and don't get our hands dirty and go to the shop floor? And maybe one of the assumptions will be flawed, and then we will miss that one assumption that will get the impact on the whole architecture, and we have to restart all over again. And then we have these projects of 2, 3, 4 years of studies, but they also don't see the light of day.
I'm not against agile, so I like very much the agile manifesto. All the ideas and let's say key topics that are there, I love them. For instance, it says that you should promote doing things instead of making paperwork, and I also agree. It does not say that it's forbidden to do some paperwork. Okay, so the idea is that you will never ever plan a perfect system, because when you start to plan, so many things happen and you need to change your plan. So you need the first architecture of your system should be good. It's not doing paperwork. You can start to work on a system without having it fully defined. Okay, but the key topics, for instance, non-functional requirements, should be expressed at imagine that you want to release a web shop. So you need to know how many customers you need. So you need to know what tools you should set up in order to have the customers or a peak of customers, for instance, for Christmas, if they are 1 million or 100,000 million customers. Okay, so this will drive the set of tools, technologies, and mindset on your project. So you need to create this framework. Despite not fully complete, the key topics are addressed and are as much as possible elaborated, and then you start to do things, but with the mindset already defined. Of course, you can revise the mindset, but each time someone do something, you have a structure to validate if you are going in the proper way or not in the proper way. It's easy if you have a small company, a partner, technology partner, that you can speed up, use to speed up your activities. You say, please come here. This is our goal, our mindset. We are working on this way. Can you contribute with something? And then you, let's call it, plug this new thing on the global setup. There is a sentence from a guy called Kurt Levin that I use many times. There is nothing so practical as a good theory. Because if we think before we do, at the end, let's say long term, we have better results. Of course, we are faster if we don't think and do things, but then we end up with many tools not working together, and we create a nightmare instead of a heaven of digitalized harmony of processes.
Thank you for listening. And let me just quickly thank today's sponsor, Progro, by asking you this. While you're listening to this podcast, do you know what is happening on the factory floor? With Progro, you get real-time insights from your machines as if you're just talking to them. Download the free app and ask, what is happening with my factory? And a tailor-made answer to your production needs will pop up immediately. Also, use our promo code POD1 and you'll get a free IoT device today. We think now, trying to go a little bit not so macro in this conversation, and thinking about, maybe if you allow me to call this, 3 different technologies. When we look into AI, we hear a lot about it. We previously and still do a lot about IoT, Internet of Things, connecting. And then we have simulation and digital twins, where we can simulate and see what's happening. What this 3 different type of technology, what do you think it's giving us the most tangible results? Can we see them separately, or are they all a little bit combined? How do you look at them?
For instance, with Gartner reports, they have this hype cycle. AI in the last years was climbing the mountain, and it was still today a hype thing. So everyone that has a product, call it AI enabled, AI whatever, okay? AI, just for the record, has more than 80 years, 80. Many things occurred during this time. So currently, AI is a driving force, and many of this hype comes from large language models that we can all use, and generative AI, let's say, algorithms that can speculate and based on inputs of text and photos and videos can create answers that are very fantastic to us. We evaluate as fabulous, and they are. Okay, but this will not solve everything. For instance, with some contacts with companies, real world companies in Portugal at least, uh, companies want AI without data. Okay, AI has many fields. One of the fields of AI is machine learning. And when we talk about AI currently, most likely it will be machine learning. And machine learning is based on data. In shop floor, in logistics, in supply chains, you need data, accurate data. So this is the first problem. No one will get benefits from AI if they don't create proper data. So to create data, you need sensors. Either you have machines already enabled with sensoring and putting data in a central repository, whatever, but sometimes you need this sensor, this IoT. If you have old machines, you can put sensors and collect data also. So you don't need the latest status of the machines to have data on your shop floor. And this is quite important because normally, until some years ago, data was provided by humans. Okay, instead of having a sensor collecting the temperature, you will have a sensor, a thermometer, that someone will read and write on a paper, and then at the end of the shift or at Fridays they put in some Excel or some whatever. Okay, so you had data, but data was not accurate and it was not available in real time. So IoT brings this benefit of improving the data quality. Okay, but before algorithms of AI, you also need to cure the data. So you need to cleanse the data. This is a tedious work. It's not a fancy work. And companies, just because they have lots of data, they think they can use AI. They can't. Otherwise, they will receive incomplete data, data with stating one thing and the opposite at the same time. So you need to cleanse to remove all these problems from your data. And then yes, you need AI. Since I would say more than 10 years ago, 15 years I would say or more, we start to use the digital twins approach NASA used with the spaceship and so on. But on the shop floor, we need services. One part of the digital twin is when I receive that data, what should I do in real time? Okay.
I know that you have a very great example of a digital twin that maybe people can relate to very easily. You and your students are trying to do. Can you share that so that we can understand a little bit the concept of the digital twin?
You may have heard about digital twins of ships, about shop floor and so on, but we are making a digital twin of Humberto Gomes, the goalkeeper of ABC Handball Club in Brack.
Does that work, and how does that can help? Because there's a real good value there, right?
Yeah. So the goalkeepers in handball are very useful. I would say they account for more than half of the, let's say, the value of the team because they decide things really. And there are two times, and you asked about simulation and digital twins can be used before you have a product. So let's call it, you simulate the product even before the product existing. For instance, you can use it with cars to make their shape in order to have these coefficients very, very good on the low level. But in handball, you have training and you have games. So during the games, you cannot actuate. You cannot tell the goalkeeper what to do because it's not allowed. But during the training, you can do things. So you can inform what should be the answer or the actuation of the goalkeeper in order to avoid to concede goals. You can train their minds based on past data because you have videos of all the games and you can digitize those videos in order to create a simulation of the game, but it's a simulation based on reality. So it's a different representation of the game where our goalkeeper will play and will be trained. So the actuation will not be done by a digital service, but it will be done on their brains because some neurons will be reconfigured in order to answer to that situation when you will be on the game.
Just one thing that you explained to me is that the goalkeeper, because the ball is thrown so fast,
Yes.
in order for him to defend it, he has to anticipate the
Yes.
movement. He has to move prior to the ball being thrown, and that prediction is something that you want to train, right? Because players will tend to use the same type of playbook, and then you can adapt on each player. So you're preparing for a game, and he can simulate how that game will be, and start predicting when should he go
Exactly.
for it, right?
Exactly. The prediction algorithm will be implemented in the head of the goalkeeper and not on some digital computing system. But it is
Well,
exactly because you don't have time in handball. Sometimes when they strike the goal, they reach 125 kilometers per hour. And sometimes they shoot 5 meters away or 7 meters or 9 meters. So you don't have time. You have to guess, and it's like a probability game. If the opponent is doing that movement and my defense is on that standing, the probability that the ball comes to the goal on that particular area is higher. And this prediction algorithm that normally goalkeepers do by looking at the opponent, where the arm is, the shoulders, the eyes, the head, our defender. So they bring all these inputs, they create an answer that is, I will be here because the ball will be here when they should. And this is very interesting because it is a digital twin. We use simulation, and we use also this prior to operation version of a digital twin. Sometimes some authors classify as digital shadows when you only have input of data, digital twin when you have input and output, and also digital models where you don't have data coming in, but you have a simulation of what should happen, and you can create without any data entering or leaving the digital twin. But they are still very useful.
If we could circle then back, you were talking about the digital twins on the shop floor, about then having data, cleaning the data, having the AI models, having the digital twin. Can you share an example of a digital twin that can help us?
Okay, for instance, one of the systems that we did together, my team, we did some years ago, 10 years ago almost, was based on AI. But on just to say that AI sometimes is very easy. It's not always a thing that only Google and Microsoft can do. For instance, one part of machine learning algorithms are based on what is called production rules. If this happens, then I will do this thing. And we could come up with a system that was observing in real time all the shop floor. And before we could put our products on the warehouse and ship to the customers, some, let's say, evaluation was made by the managers in order to release the lot of finished products. So this, of course, this was based on data. Of course, this was based on manual use of data, and of course, this was done at the end of the shift. And it took hours before the results came to someone that could decide. And at the end, the products were already almost in France when you decide they cannot leave your company. This is not good. So we created a real-time digital twin of the shop floor. We use the input data of all the production stations. We had all of this digitized, and we use that data with very simple rules based on propositional logic. If then, do this. So, for instance, if you have a product that has a problem, you should move the product to a repair station. If it does not go to the repair station before the second try on the production station, this is a failure and the lot is blocked. With three rules, we could save at the time 2.5 million euros per year because we avoid small cracks in solder paste that are intermittent failures. And because you put so many times, the system heats up and the failure is not anymore appearing. But when you are at the customer, they are not heated, and you have the failure. So the key message is that you don't need fancy technologies. We did all of this with open source software based on Apache Software Foundation, and with very few, let's call it knowledge, three rules. At the end, you need, when you have this approach of digital twins, artificial intelligence, IoT, whatever, you need good people with the proper mindset in your organization. And then you can set up your projects with the big picture on your head, you can set up and have a path to achieve the proper business results. Because at the end, companies are focused on business results, not on implementing technology itself.
You touch about people, and you said in the beginning also people are the most important part in an organization. But when we look into AI evolving, automation evolving, robotics, and all of this that we're just talking about, how do you see the factories evolving? Will people still have a place there? Are they irreplaceable?
My favorite answer is it depends.
I love it. Yes, it
Okay, but let's say,
depends.
if I
But
want,
you will be right for sure.
yes, yes. If I want to be right answering you, I always say in 10 years, probably not. In 100 years, yes. In 1,000 years, no question. So we have a path. Either we say people are important for production, yes, currently, and on the next times, I see less and less important the role of humans in production. I know that this is not, let's say, very
I know.
a nice thing to say, but if you want to standardize to do always the same thing and this same thing, let's say the same process is a best in class process, and the deviations are things that currently are treated by humans, but also deviations can be treated by these LLM algorithms, weight of the people in the production will diminish. Okay, if we remember, let's say 100 years ago, in the first industrial revolution, the weight of the people in the production was much higher, and then we have some automatization of the process, we had this digitalization, and the fourth industrial revolution, it's not having software or automatization in the shop floor or electricity before, it's about connectivity, connecting processes and people and machines and algorithms, whatever, everything in, let's call it a metaverse or a big digital world that maps my company. Okay. I see that in the near, and even today and in the past years, we heard about lights out factories. Okay. Some approaches where you don't have one human, lights out because the lights are
Yes, you don't need any lights.
you
Yes,
don't
yes.
need any lights and things are working. There are other theories that say that we will not have big plants moving the parts along the world, but we will have small plants nearby the big consumption areas. Of course, this poses many challenges, but at the end, if you ask me, could you set up a plant without any person on it? I would say yes, today I can, with the technology, the mindset, and so forth.
Then you see it a little bit different, like Jeff Bezos and others look at, we'll have maybe factories in space and they will be doing there and they will just bring us whenever we need the stuff down here. I think you look at it as we will have it closer to us so that it doesn't circulate that much.
It's I see on the economical side, moving parts is waste or muda, like the Kaizen people call it.
Yes.
No one likes muda. So if I can produce something nearby you, the cost of transportation will be much less. We have this automatization of production, we have the data collection, we have intelligent algorithms that can do things and actuate. But nowadays, we could have buyers of materials with agents or agentic AI in your plant. You can have deals with your suppliers and customers based with agents. This current level of AI is not addressing blue collar workers, but white collar workers.
But one thing that you're saying is one of the reasons to do it offshore is the price of labor, right? And that will no longer be a factor because you will automate and have all of these tools. So you can bring it close to
Yes.
where you're using. But then on the other level, you have always raw materials that you need to buy from different countries, and then you have tariffs. And sometimes it's cheaper to send a semi-finished product because it's no longer a commodity, it doesn't pay the same tariffs. Do you think that these rules that we have now in terms of global trading will change with how the industry also evolves, or is it like completely different and it's just geopolitics?
These are the, let's say, the big drivers of how industry will shape itself. Okay, these political decisions of tariffs and the cost of labor and so forth. These drives how industry are organized itself. So the answer will also always be the cheapest way to do it will be the way to do it. But then we have some disappointments. If we think about the last 20 years, European automotive industry moved into China. We move not only in automotive, for instance, in ship makings or ICs making plants, we moved to Asia mainly. And at the end, then you move your capacity to negotiate, you move your core skills, and then you discover that you need that. So if we only based on these economical factors, which is the current trend, so it's easy and cheaper to do on the Far East. I move all my plants to Far East and I receive a big money in my company because I could do many millions of saving and I can retire on a but then 10 years later, you discover Europeans or the company discovers that is completely dependent of a foreign power that cannot fulfill your demands as you wish. And somehow we need to figure out that sometimes we need to have some waste on our industries in order to keep core competencies in our physical space.
Yeah, and throughout COVID, it was also critical to see how countries need to be a little bit also independent and able to provide for themselves whenever you have borders that are closed. And Apple also now it is a very interesting book how they just developed the whole manufacturing infrastructure in China, and now they invested billions there without maybe knowing, but not with this effect that now they are this manufacturing superpower, which they have the skills, they have the supply chain, they have everything. And now it's playing maybe not as well for the US as they would think.
We will have supply chains that will cooperatively move and change based on conditions. So if tariffs are low, I can plug in a service to do a shirt coming from Morocco or from India. If the tariffs are higher, I can plug a service from Germany. But at the end, the supply chain will not be disrupted. So I think this will be in the next 20 years, 10 to 20 years, it will happen. So business processes will be composed of elementary digital processes that where you make things, and based on economic conditions or strategic decisions, things will be moving without disrupting the outcomes of the process.
I could stay on this topic for a long time, but I love to move to a short segment, which we call a press and guess. And the whole idea is just to throw a few questions at you. And the challenge is for you to answer as quick as possible, just to know a little bit where you
Without
stand on.
thinking.
Yeah, exactly. What's harder to fix, a process or a mindset?
Mindset. Processes, we can reset and change them very easily. The mindset of people, it takes time. On the same book by Eric Schmidt, they say they only hire intelligent, creative people, stating that when they open a vacancy, they will not hire the best of the candidates, but only the best of the ones that are above their minimum conditions. Even if they don't have the minimum conditions, they will not hire anyone. It's not the best of the candidates that applied, because if they don't have the proper mindset, it will be a problem on your organization.
Next one, more data or better insight?
Better insights. Data is full of rubbish. It's very hard to clean it. Having more data, it's not always very good.
It's a bit tricky because you need data for insights, right? But I completely understand. So if you have better insights, but sometimes you can have better insights with less data, right?
With less
Just clean
data,
it and have it
curate
proper.
it.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
What's riskier? A system that fails or one that no longer challenges?
The second one. A system that fails, it's not always a problem. If your failure time is very small and you can reboot it, it's no problem. Sometimes you don't even notice. And when you fail, you can look into the root causes and changes. It's difficult because sometimes we accommodate, then we move quickly into tech debt situations, and we pay a lot. I heard many cases in our industry where people get accommodated to a technology, to a system that is working, we don't touch it. And then when you need to touch it, you are overwhelmed by the quantity of work you need to do on one shot.
Faster tech or more informed teams?
I don't have a black and white answer. I love technology, and I tend to incorporate as much as possible and as new as possible. This is a risk, but over the years it paid a lot to be on the cutting edge of the technology, because you can do things. For instance, I remember in 2004, something like that, we could go into SAP and get the data using remote procedure calls. No one was using that. Even SAP was not using, so they have the traditional graphical user interface, and we could use the data inside the ERP on our behalf in real time in production with mobile systems. So this cutting edge of the technology could bring some very good benefits for years. I'm not afraid of technology, even the new technology that has more risks than proven technologies. If we are cautious and evaluate the risks, they can be very beneficial to us. I would say the first one.
AI that predicts or AI that explains?
It predicts. I am not aware of any war started by an AI. So I trust AI for time being. I don't care if they explain to me or not. For time being, I'm focused on results. I know that there is a big hype on TRISM and trust and all these AI features. It is good to control what AI is doing, but if we control the development process, I don't need that in operation time I get an explanation why and this decision. So if it's like a doctor, if I go to the doctor and he said do that, I will not ask him why. I'm not qualified. I trust the doctor. Otherwise, I don't use that doctor.
The way to the last question will also help us to get to the next and final part of our conversation, which is when we are preparing students, are we preparing them to follow technology or to question it?
Currently, I would say to follow. But one of my goals is to more and more act on question it. In reality, in our companies, our organizations, in the real world, it's very difficult to be precise, to have all the data that you need in time, all the information and so forth. So you need to cope with this uncertainty. And the same on technology. Sometimes you hear students, why did you use that technology? Oh, because my colleague, which is a good programmer, said that to me. And he believes. He said it's the best and I use it. No, they should ask why. Because even the best technology in that particular case, for instance, currently in software engineering, the architectural pattern most used is microservices. So it looks like microservices will solve every problems in software systems. And sometimes it's counterproductive because you are inducing a high level of complexity into your system. You don't know how to manage it, and at the end, the effect or the outcome of your project will be a nightmare. You need a complete team of support and maintenance, a very costly team, and you do the same that a much simpler system can do.
We suffered that quite a bit here because it's also sometimes trendy. Netflix started with the whole microservices, and everyone wanted to have that, but they had this massive platform with a lot of people using it, massive team. And then we had small teams like us also trying to build the whole the same way, and then we ended up going to monolithic solution, which is easier to manage and to keep on growing. So I definitely felt that.
So the correct answer is it depends. Sometimes based on your environment, one or other solution is better, and technology is the same. It's the same.
Yes, exactly. But thank you very much for playing along with in this small segment. But stay on that topic, and I know you worked a lot in the Minho University, and you have been in contact with the next generation of engineers. And when you look now at these tools that you said, the LLMs that came out, and they are helping a lot to coding. One of the areas that they have been focusing a lot is coding, and it seems at least that coding is becoming better, faster, and so forth. How can you prepare this new generation of engineers in this new market? Where I have, for instance, Mark Zuckerberg saying that junior engineers will no longer be needed. In a few years, mid engineers, software developers, of course, will not be needed. Is that true? Is it changing? What is happening? How can you prepare for that?
Yeah, it's also the $1 million question, but it's a very challenging time. All of us, at least my generation, when we want to program, we go to Google and ask for send me an algorithm to calculate the average of an array. Okay, and we could pick some algorithms, we could check, we could talk with our colleagues. So what we were doing was, if we don't know by heart, for instance, we could receive all this input and then we decide what will be the algorithms. When we move to LLM world currently, all this support to developing software, to programming software, which is different from developing. So to program, you can ask an LLM, give me the algorithm, and the LLM that has an infinite almost database can pick the best choice, because many of the answers that he could receive was exactly that one. So they can provide you a very good algorithm and you can use it. Okay, so I would say that the skills to create code out of the blue will be less needed in already. They are already not. For instance, we can notice on the students' work that when we say we need to develop a software, people that are not so, let's say, keen to program, some years ago they avoid, oh no, it's difficult, I have to study, I have to do this and that. Nowadays they don't care. They assume that if they can state properly the requirements, and this is a very important topic for the future of our students, uh, if they can state properly the requirements, let's call it the prompt engineering, to state the requirements, they can receive a very good output in a particular language that they can use in their systems. Okay, but this is only a part of the topics. Creating requirements precise is very important. Requirements engineering also, the architectural part. So if you pick the code and you don't know if it will run on the edge, for instance, imagine in automotive world, if that piece of software will run inside the car or in a cloud, you need to have proper skills of software architecture. And then, let's say, the execution, the creation of the code uh, could be done by LLMs or by other approaches that currently are already available, like low code or no code systems that can release very rapidly a software system without many programming or without any programming at all. So if I was the CEO of a big cloud company, I would say, you don't need to program, just use my systems. I will put some, let's call it AI or zero coding or no coding, whatever, and you will be completely happy with my system. The problem arises always when you want to use different systems. So if you want to stay on that, let's call digital world of that cloud provider, you can do it without any question, without any code, without writing anything. If you want to have something there and something there and something on your PC, maybe this will not be the case. But at the end, I would say from software engineering, traditional areas like requirements, architecture, design, programming, and testing, without all the stuff around, I would say programming will be the most affected together with testing. Say currently you need people to do functional testing, but you can already have automated testing and having algorithms testing your system, for instance, like agents. So these two will be affected. The other three, I think there is still room to for humans in the next years, mostly on requirements engineering, because this is quite important. Because when you do the requirement specification, you have knowledge that is not formalized. So, for instance, one example that I give to my students: if you enter a coffee shop, a restaurant, you have a big sign in red saying "No smokers," and you have to pay 750 euros if you are a smoker. Of course, the intention of the ones that made those red cards is you cannot smoke. It's not that you are not a smoker, but we have on our minds that someone put it wrong. We read it, and we understand that this is not for the smoker, but for to the act of smoking. So this is not data, it's not information, it's knowledge or wisdom. So we have the wisdom to write proper specification for a system that could digitalize that situation. The algorithms currently don't have this higher level of wisdom. Okay, so for time being, I would say in the next 10 years, I would bet on requirements and architecture. But at the end, for sure, software system can be set up by software. Even last week, Anthropic AI and IBM confirmed that in 20% of some inputs that they provide to Anthropic algorithms, the system had self-awareness. So self-awareness was considered a completely human characteristic, not a machine characteristic. It's impossible on machines, and they are confirming that in 20% of their input, they made some statements over there that the algorithm showed self-awareness. He knows what he is, that he is alive, what he can do, what he can't do. So we are moving into a very, let's say, fuzzy world about AI and humans.
Then that changes a little bit. That's no longer an LLM, right? Because from what I understand, an LLM predicts the next word, and it's very good at prediction. And as you said before, it's maybe more machine learning than actually reasoning. I know that they use the word reasoning a lot, but I think it's more marketing, at least from my understanding, than actually understanding what you're doing. Or is it just probabilities? I'm just giving you the best probability of the next word being the correct one. And that's why coding applies so well, because it's so mathematical. So you're getting that right word is you can do that. But when you're being self-aware, it's way more than that, right? So
Yes.
it's a different technology, or is it still the same?
They don't explain why they are self-aware. They just say that they showed characteristics of self-awareness.
Might that be just marketing?
Probably, but we have to look, and the paper is very well written, described in detail. So, in order for you to reproduce, so it's not a statement on the newspaper. It's a technical investigation that is shared and someone can comment. And of course, sometimes we have emergent properties of systems that we can't explain why the system has those properties. And let's say symptoms of self-awareness can be shown if we ask how it was made. We say we don't know for time being.
We'll try to study that a little bit. But going back to vibe coding, right? If you start vibe coding, and you're saying that engineers in the future will be more focused on the requirement, on the architecture, on setting the defining the problems, then it will just vibe code and prompt. But if you have hallucinations that happens and we can't figure them out yet completely, don't you create technical debt, and then you eventually will have to go there, uh, code review, understand where is it breaking? Will we still do that, or do you think that hallucinations will eventually be solved and we can trust the code 100% and we don't even need to look at it?
Hallucinations, either on algorithms or humans, will continue to exist.
Okay, so there is no thing as a perfect code,
No.
and will
But
never be.
yeah, never. But that's why we need the testing phase. We can have algorithms that can generate code, and then we also could have algorithms that can test code. It's somehow a confrontation of algorithms that was also used in the past in AI in some systems. But at the end, it's a game where when you develop, you cannot be 100% assured that all the requirements were met. So you need testing. Even the software quality area inside software engineering, you have tests to check the behavior of the system when the system is running, either functional tests if the intended functionalities are implemented properly, and non-functional tests, for instance, scalability and so forth. But you also need to check if your company has some regulations on how to write code. It's also part of the quality to check if the code is right properly. It's not the running code, but let's call it the non-running code. You can do inspections and evaluation. For instance, currently you can have a directive on your company stating that on each class you should have a description. Okay, if you don't have a description of the class or the methods, the evaluation will be negative. And many people don't follow this norm. The effect of that is that the system will run exactly the same, but in 1 year, if someone leaves the company and we want to do maintenance and support of the system, you don't have the explanation, you don't have the documents, and then you have a problem. So maybe the algorithms could help also, can do this evaluation of the code and so on. So at the end, always a game between doers and evaluators. Okay, and I think, let's say, it's a very widespread pattern. The guys that are doing are not the ones that evaluate.
So normally you have different teams, right? So at least you should have different systems, not the same LLM doing both things. But when you look into the new engineers that are being trained in universities, do you think that we are preparing them for a world that no longer exists, or are we already adapting?
We are adapting. For instance, in University of Minho, we have a pro-rector that is focused on pedagogical innovation and new ways of teaching and studying and so forth. It's not always the classes where the professor knows everything, passes some slides, and the students are quiet and taking notes. So we have other ways, for instance, team-based learn, project-based learn, and so forth, where we can adapt our classes in order to have the input of the students, or to move the cycles of learning from starting with the professor stating something, then the student studying something, and then have a test to check. For instance, on team-based learn, you give some papers, some videos, some texts to the students, and you say, study this before the class. Then at the class, you can, let's say, interact with the students to check what they understood of the materials, then move them into groups, and together they create a understanding of what was individually learned by each one, and create, for instance, a presentation, and then you present all the 3, 4, 10 groups on the class, and the professor is like let's say, a shepherd of the statement, saying, do you think this is a good approach? To question how they are doing, to question, as you said before, the technology or the approach or whatever, to force the student to reach conclusions by themselves. Okay, this is one driving force. The other is that currently all the students use LLMs to produce work. So one of the approaches that we use is that we force students to use LLMs. We force them. They have to state where and why they use it and what was the result. Okay, so on that approach, the students know that it's not impossible to use, it's desirable, but it should be in a way that they are aware of the answers, they were analytical, they were criticizing the answer of the LLM, and then when they put on the work, they made a revision and an integration of all the parts. So this is also one preparation. The third, let's say, aspect is that the current mindset is that they don't need to read or to understand deeply the matters. So in my generation, if we were interested in Unix, we should pick a book of Unix and then
And be
deeply
the
go.
expert, right?
Yeah, it's going into Unix, knowing all the commands and so forth. But currently, their mindset is like, I don't need to go deep on Unix now because I will not use it in the next day. So when I need to use Unix, I will ask an LLM that will give me an answer with the best content at that time. The mindset of this generation, my vision, is that they want to know things. They want to know how to use LLMs, and then they go deep when they need. I'm speaking in general terms, of course. We have many characters in the students.
Don't you think that that's happening overall? So we
Yes,
tend,
yes,
because information is so available, that you tend to know less in the details, but know a lot about a lot of things.
But even though you have some sites that you know that they are curated, let's call it, you can learn deeply things much easily than 20 or 30 years ago, much easily. When I was a student, I need to go physically to the library of the university, ask for a book, and the answer was a professor took the book. I don't know when it comes. So we go back home. Next week we go there another time, and the answer will be the same. Sometimes 2 or 3 months just to get the book. Okay, currently it takes 1 second.
Yeah, but previously you would read the book, you would underline everything, you would study deeply, and that would be printed in your brain. Now you just prompt. It's so easy to get that you also don't do the effort to memorize it, right?
You are right. So we have all the tools to learn much deeply any subject than before. But I would say, in general terms, people are not using that ability, that capacity, and they are just walking on
The
on the,
surface.
on the surface.
So, but when you look into your students and to students in general, what give you the most hope and what worries you the most about the future of education?
In Portugal, going to the university was a big thing. So it was very restrictive. So when the students that arrived at universities some decades ago were really the ones that wanted and were highly motivated, highly focused on getting things done. Currently, it's much easier, but nevertheless, each generation has characteristics. Some are, let's call it positive or negative, depending on the point of view. But what I can see is that the communication is much easier with professors and among students. So this is a very good point. So 20 years ago, 30 years ago, to talk to a professor, you needed to think and to go there with a very precise, and they didn't have time. And currently, it's like they are one of us. We are discussing things. They have ideas. They are not afraid of telling their ideas. They don't mind if the professor said black because they think it's white. So they have more opinions and more ideas and more proposals, and the communication is at, let's say, on a parallel level. They get things done more easily because technology is much easy to use. For instance, if someone tries to program in assembler code with zeros and ones a software system, currently forget it. The complexity makes it impossible. So you have higher abstractions, LLMs or sixth or fourth generation languages, where you can interface with the technology. It's much easier. So for them, for the students, they can create complex things much easily than before. So they are, let's say, they do things. They can come out with something working much easily. So this mindset is also a very good thing. The risks that I see is that missing, let's say, the approach to learn deeply something. For instance, how do they write? It's let's say it's not the proper way. How do they do mathematics is not the proper way. How do they know the special thing of that technology? It's, let's say, working on the surface. So the students, the risk is that they don't cultivate this approach to know not everything, but two, three, four things that they should be very good on that. And this is the base for them to evolve professionally, to evolve academically. And based on that, they can create software, they can go into the marketing departments, whatever. But they need to know things. Otherwise, we all be generalists that we don't know nothing. When I appointed you a basketball professional coach, you start to learn about basketball the day before, and then you are a professional coach of basketball. Impossible.
That's a little bit the worry, right? If the whole world will just become vanilla, we are all a little bit just gray. We all
Yeah.
have access to the same information. We all are trained the same way, so we all like the same stuff. Yeah, but hopefully we'll not, and we'll be still a Benetton world. Francisco, thank you very much for this episode. It was really insightful. We talked so much, and we really learned a lot from you. Thank you very much for this
It was
opportunity.
my pleasure, always a pleasure to talk with you, and
Yeah.
my pleasure to be invited and to participate on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francisco.
Join our connected shop floor communities on LinkedIn and Reddit. And subscribe our channels.